Welcome to Papa Leroy Cooks. Today we're going to make this beautiful dish right here from some local halibut. Salt and pepper. Angel shark. Wow, look at that. Lunch has been served. We're going to do the sous vide halibut. And this right here is an important piece of equipment that you're going to need for that. It heats up the water, but it also circulates it, so the water's constantly moving. I recommend if you're going to get one of these, spend a little bit more money and get the more powerful one, the 1000 watt rather than the 500, just so you have that if you're going to do a piece of meat, because you can do just about any kind of cut of meat or fish with this. You can do vegetables as well. As you can see, there's water levels on here. It's got to at least go, the water has to go up to here, but it can't go farther than that because that's where all the electrical stuff is, the motor and all that. You don't want to destroy it. So when I get it set up, I'll show you guys more. You want it probably when you set it up to be like about an inch or so off the bottom of whatever vessel you're using for the water. But we'll let this go. I got it set to 150 degrees. And when it hits that 150 degrees, it'll stop heating, but it'll keep the water at a constant 150 degrees. That's the important part of the sous vide cooker. You want to make sure it stays at that constant temperature, whatever you set it at. We have our halibut that's been properly taken care of, been filleted fresh and vacuum packed and frozen. I'm just going to pat it dry because the freezing process does tend to make it lose a little bit of moisture. Okay, we don't necessarily need the angawa, so we're going to take it off. Just run your finger here. That's that fin meat. If you've seen the last video I did on cleaning halibut, Japanese we call that the angawa, and we like to keep that part for making sushi because it's real crunchy and real chewy. And I'm feeding 3 people today, so I'm going to measure out here. This of course is going to be a little bit thicker than these cuts, so this one is not going to be as wide, but it is thicker. And this one is going to be like that. So, because you want to be able to have a pretty good timing on this fish. But one thing I forgot to mention about the sous vide is it's almost foolproof. Halibut is one of the hardest things to cook and cook right because it's a white meat fish and there's not a lot of fat in it, so you have a tendency to overcook it really fast. Well, we're not going to do that in the sous vide cooker because it's a little bit more forgiving when it comes to that, so the chances of overcooking are a lot less.
Where did this halibut come from?
I think this halibut is what Edward just caught not too long ago, so it hasn't been in the freezer very long. I think Edward caught this one like 2 or 3 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken.
35 incher. Mm-hmm. First one on the kayak.
Yes.
Woo!
We've already prepped our halibut. It's nice and dry right now. I patted it dry because it came out of the freezer. Now we're gonna season it. Now, you can use whatever kind of seasoning you'd like. I typically want to use some salt, pepper, garlic powder, or granulated garlic. I have a little bit of seasoning that I like to use. It's called pepper plant. And then some of the people like spicy, so I'm going to throw a little bit of sriracha seasoning on there. So it's kind of like a powdered seasoning. And then we're going to finish off some fresh black pepper. Okay, now this is the critical part, guys. This is where we vacuum pack. If you take your bag and fold just the lip of it inside out like that, because when you do seal these bags, you want to make sure no water gets in there. You don't want water to get in the bag. So we bend it back, we paste the fillet inside. I'm going to put a pat of butter. I'm going to take a little bit of sprig of thyme and throw it in there just for a little bit of flavor. And then we're going to throw a lemon slice in there. I'm going to be a little bit more on the safe side. We're going to wipe this edge just in case to make sure I didn't get no moisture on there. And then we're going to flip it open like this and get ready for the sealing part. that's what we're looking for, completely sealed. We're gonna stick it over here for now, just to make sure that it doesn't get any air in there, so we know it's a complete good seal. And then I'm gonna go ahead and finish the rest of these right here and get it ready. Okay, now I'm getting ready to do a little bit of roasted tomatoes. These are actually little cherry tomatoes out of Edwards and Veronica's garden. They're freshly picked, so we're gonna throw those in there. And then we're gonna season those up too with a little bit of salt. Okay, some black pepper, fresh garlic. Throw 1 or 2 pieces in there. This thing, nice thing about cooking is if you like garlic, you can always put more. There's no rule that says you can't put whatever you want. Okay, we're also going to throw a little bit of olive oil in here. Just a little bit, not much. Probably about like 1/4 teaspoon. You can mix it up with your hands. You know, to get that garlic flavor around. Get that olive oil and salt and pepper all mixed in. I'm just going to use this little baking sheet right here, this little cake pan. Because you want the tomatoes to be all evenly put out like that. You don't want them to be mounded up or anything. So I'm going to throw all that goodness of the garlic in here. Some people like to put a little pinch of sugar in here. You can. Kind of helps with the caramelization of the tomatoes. You don't have to. I'm kind of going for the actual taste of the tomato with a little bit of garlic, salt, and pepper. So I'm going to forego the sugar part. Part of the dish that I want to make for them as well, accompaniment to go with the halibut, is I got some real small heirloom potatoes. I'm going to go ahead and I've already par roasted these, so they're not all the way cooked because I want a little bit of the flavor to absorb in when I stick them in the 425 degree oven. That's what I got the oven set at right now. So it won't take very long, like I said, because I did cook them. They're almost all the way cooked, but they have probably about another 15 minutes to go. So I'm going to go ahead and split these potatoes because they're kind of big. And then we're going to season them up and put them in the oven. We're going to go ahead and season the potatoes. So what I like to do is I like to take a little bit of olive oil, probably about, I don't know, about a tablespoon. And then a little black pepper, of course. And this is sea salt, by the way. Okay. And then one of the spices that I like to use is called Suzy Q. I think a lot of people in the Central Coast know what Suzy Q is, maybe all over California. But I like to use this for my potatoes, and I'm pretty generous with it. It's got a mixture of garlic and all kinds of neat things and stuff like that. So we're just going to toss these potatoes in here, get them all evenly coated and seasoned. Same as the tomatoes. You want to put these in here, get all the goodness out. You want to make them as even as possible because you want them to kind of caramelize in the heat and get that nice crustiness to them. And those will go in the oven just a little bit after the tomatoes go in, because the tomatoes are going to take a little bit longer than the potatoes, because remember I already par baked these. We're going to cut some shallots up. For those of you who don't know how to cut a shallot is like an onion, just a small onion, packed with a lot of flavor. So we want to do a fine dice, so being very careful. We cut it this way first, then we kind of hold on to it, kind of put a little bit of pressure on it and cut down. And then we want to chop it. Okay, I'm putting my halibut in. You just make sure that they're kind of loose. They're going to float around because the water is circulating. You're going to start seeing the butter melt and the fish is going to be starting to turn opaque. And that's what you want. We're just going to slow cook it at 150 degrees. And we just let that go for 15 minutes. And the fish should be perfect. And then when that happens, we're going to pull them out, let them sit for just a second in the bag. And then I'm going to take them over there and I'm going to sear them in a really hot pan with some olive oil to give it a little crust. Because it's fine to eat it right out of here when it comes out of here, but that added little bit of sear on one side, the presentation side, which is normally the inside of the fish, right? That's going to give you a little bit better plate presentation. We're going to saute some asparagus tips. I just want the tips. We're about 6 minutes out. We're going to saute these with a little bit of olive oil and some butter. We're going to throw our shallots in. Kind of sweat them out a little bit, get the flavor out of the shallots. Whenever you're cooking with butter, straight butter, you should always put a little bit of olive oil in there. Keeps your butter from burning. I didn't tell you guys about myself, but I am not a school-trained chef. I am a self-taught chef. Okay, my grandfather in Japan is the one who taught me mostly, and my mother, because I was growing up in Japan, taught me how to make the Japanese food. So that's where I learned that. Like I said, I'm not a classically trained chef. I didn't go to school. Self-taught. And you can do this by yourself. I mean, you don't have to be a chef to be able to cook like a pro at home. As you can see, you know, it's easy stuff. Timing, all that kind of stuff. Getting all your stuff ready to go, which we call mise en place, which is a French term that means get all your stuff ready to go. So everything's in front of you, so you don't have to go searching for things. But that's the important thing. And a neat thing about today is my first video. And I kind of want to dedicate it to my grandfather. His name was Hajime. And Hajime in Japanese means to start. So there you go. So I'm dedicating it to him. He's long gone now, but I learned a lot from him. So that's kind of cool that it's Hajime time, which is start time. A little bit more. 15 minutes. Take out the halibut out of each bag and then gently slip out the halibut if you can without breaking it. Well, as you can tell, I broke it. We don't want the lemon anymore, and you can pull the thyme off. That's what the sous vide does to it. It makes it so juicy and so tender. Heat up our pan right here. Over here. So we're going to do medium high. Okay, you want this olive oil to get hot. Okay, so kind of squidge it around. And because these are like that, we're going to stick it on the presentation side. Okay, I'm going to have to do this in 2 sections. We're just going to let those sear for about a minute and a half on medium-high heat until it gets like a little crust. So you're not really overcooking it, so you don't have to worry about that. Just going to give it a little bit of browning, a little bit of texture to your halibut. Kind of put them in a line like that. Put it right here, this, middle. Take some roasted tomatoes and stick it right up on top here. Get a spoon. We want these to end up on top. Like this. And we're gonna finish with a little bit of Parmesan cheese. Clean my plate a little bit for the presentation, and finish it with a little bit of chopped parsley. And there you go. We got sous vide, local California halibut. Right, sous vide at 150 degrees. Some roasted potatoes, small heirloom potatoes. We got roasted cherry tomatoes with garlic, a little bit of Parmesan cheese, and some pan-seared asparagus. Bon appetit! I want to see you try it. It's gonna be good. I hope. Nice and juicy.
It's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, really good.
I mean, frozen fish, it'll come out good. Fresh fish is always better. We last night or the night before last night we used the fresh halibut that I caught on your dad's boat a couple days ago. But you know, you can do it with frozen fish. It'll come out just as good.
It's not as moist.
Yeah, not as moist because a lot of it comes out in the freezing. Probably, you know, when I took the paper towel. Yeah, that's the only difference. But my choice is to always, if we're gonna do sous vide, do it fresh.
Fresh fish.
But yeah, but we didn't have that luxury because.
No.
We didn't have a halibut on hand that was fresh.
Yeah.
So.
No, but like for me last night, it was because I've had really dry halibut. I like halibut, but halibut you can ruin in 2.5 seconds, just because it's not a lot of fat content. It's just pure, you know, like the steak of the fish world, and you can dry it out with very little fat content.
It's got bite to it.
Definitely more tender than if you cooked it any other way. Like on the grill or anything like that. But the seasoning, the marinade, all of that, you could tell that it does infuse a bit more inside because it was all vacuum sealed, no air. It just really was able to permeate. And then that additional butter seemed to have really permeated as well.
And then the
But if you notice the tomatoes,
that acidity comes
Yeah.
through.
that little sweet tomato
Yeah.
roasted on top, kind of cuts the richness of the fish.
Yeah, I'm gonna try it because I got to compare it with the fresh halibut that he caught the other day on your dad's boat versus your first 35-inch halibut caught on the kayak. So the first kayak caught halibut for you. So I'm gonna compare it and see how it came out. Similar processes, different seasonings.
Not quite as juicy as the fresh, but
Not quite as juicy, but
still juicy
Yeah.
enough.
it's just a good piece of fish. It's really
It
good.
is.
If you said that this had been frozen, I wouldn't be able to tell you that it had been frozen, other than the moisture content, which wouldn't necessarily be something that I could evaluate and say. It just comes across as a good piece of fish. And it's perfectly seasoned.
It's
It
really
does
good.
have that little bit of sweetness and bitterness. I can still taste butter and lemon, Parmesan. Now let's try it with the
Potato
roasted
too.
potato.
It's really good.
Potato, the asparagus.
Those potatoes are so good.
It's horrible.
Wow.
So low key, a big motivator for having a Papa Leroy Cooks channel was to have dinner with you guys, like on a more regular basis, because just you guys are so full of
Well,
like
that's-
knowledge, and the way that you share things is always amazing.
Well,
Well, that's the nice thing. We can still do a catch and cook on the beach. You know, we don't have to do a formal setting here. You know, we can almost still do a catch and cook on the beach as part of the channel too. So,
But we don't always have time to do the catch and cooks. A lot of times we run out of time. So this gives you a chance to literally play with your catch, and have a chance to see what you can do with it. Because it can be as simple as just pan frying it, and we're thinking about everybody that is out there catching their fish. How do you take care of it? Because you have that responsibility. When you catch a fish, if you're going to keep it, and you've done everything right up to that point, make sure you do everything right to get it to the table, to feed your family or to feed yourself. And it doesn't mean that you're not going to experiment and sometimes screw up, but, here's someone and here's folks that can get you along your way to having a really good meal, if you haven't already done it, so, and variety too.
well, hey, thanks for tuning in, guys. I'm looking forward to hearing your guys' comments and all that kind of stuff. Please give me some suggestions on what you'd like to see in the channel, and I'll do my best to make it happen. And we'll cook together. And you can always ask me questions if there's something that you missed or something that you want to know, or if you have a question about something. Please, write a comment in there, and then, like I said, I'll look at all the comments after we release the video. And I'll answer as many of them as I can. And if I can't answer it myself personally, then I'll ask one of my chef buddies, and he'll know. And so one way or another, we'll get you an answer. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed it. I mean, this is my first one, so it can only get better from here. Tune in next time. We're gonna do something totally different the next time.